In the shadow of a sleeping giant, the streets of Pompeii hummed with the rhythm of everyday Roman life, a prosperous coastal town where the sea breeze carried the salty temps of the Bay of Naples, mingled with the aroma of fresh-baked bread from corner ovens. Merchants called out their wares in the bustling forum, their voices echoing off colonnaded porticos adorned with statues of gods and emperors, while carts rumbled over grooved stone pavements, leaving faint trails in the dust. The sun glinted on frescoed walls depicting mythical scenes of love and battle colors, vivid under the Mediterranean sky as families gathered in atria of grand villas, water trickling from fountains into impluvia pools that reflected the calm blue above. No one paused to glance at the fertile slopes of Mount Vesuvius rising in the distance, its vineyards heavy with grapes. Promising another bountiful harvest for this mountain had stood silent for centuries, a benign guardian rather than a harbinger of doom. Yet beneath the surface, pressures built unseen, whispers of the earth that would soon shatter this illusion of eternity. The air was alive with the chatter of Latin and Oscan tongues, slaves hurrying with amphorae of wine and oil while children played in the shade of peristyle gardens, oblivious to the subtle tremors that occasionally rattled cups on tables. Pompeii, a jewel of Campania, thrived on trade from its Sarnus river port, ships docking with goods from across the empire, weaving the city into the vast web of Roman commerce. But no one understood what was coming next, the quiet accumulation of forces that would unravel it all in an instant. Founded in the mists of antiquity by Oscan settlers, descending from Neolithic roots, Pompeii had evolved through layers of influence, absorbing Greek elegance in its temples and Etruscan engineering in its walls, before bending to Samnite vigor. And finally, Roman might. By the 1st century, it stood as a testament to imperial assimilation, its population of 10 to 20,000 souls, a mosaic of merchants, artisans, farmers, and slaves, all bound by the rhythms of a city Romanized in law and luxury. Te via dell'abbondanza stretched like a vein through the heart lined with Taubernay, where shopkeepers haggled over bolts of wool, dyed in vibrant hues, the clink of coins mixing with the sizzle of street food from Therapolia. Counters olives, figs, salted fish, and loaves still warm from the millstone. Public baths echoed with the splash of heated waters drawn from aqueducts. Bodies reclining in steamy caldariums. Amid murmurs of gossip and politics, steam rising like incense. To the vaulted ceilings painted with scenes of aquatic bliss. In the forum, orators debated under the watchful gaze of the Temple of Jupiter, its marble steps worn by countless feet, while nearby the basilica administered justice with the stern echo of verdicts pronounced in the open air. The amphitheater roared on festival days with the clash of gladiators and the cheers of crowds, blood soaking the sand as the sun beat down, a spectacle that drowned out any distant rumble from the earth. Villas like the House of the Faun sprawled with opulent mosaics depicting epic battles. Gardens scented with rosemary and lavender where elite families hosted banquets, silverware gleaming on triclinia couches. Yet this harmony masked an underlying fragility, for the ground had shaken before, a reminder ignored in the pursuit of prosperity. The collapse did not begin with chaos, it began quietly, in the complacency of a city rebuilt from ruins. 17 years earlier, in AD 62, a massive earthquake had torn through Pompeii, toppling columns in the forum and cracking the sturdy tufa walls of homes, claiming lives and shattering the illusion of stability. The ground heaved with violent force, buildings collapsing in clouds of dust that choked the air, screams piercing the tumult as families fled into the streets, clutching what they could salvage from the debris. Temples dedicated to Apollo and Isis lay in heaps, their altars desecrated by the fall, while the aqueducts fractured, flooding parts of the city with murky waters that carried away the dead and the living alike. Yet the resilient Pompeians rebuilt, drawing on Roman engineering to reinforce structures with stronger arches and frescoes that masked the scars, turning devastation into a story of triumph. Markets reopened with renewed vigor, the scent of rebuilding fresh mortar and sawed wood blending with the everyday bouquet of spices from imported wares. Public works flourished under imperial patronage, the central baths rising anew with hypocaust floors, warming the tiles underfoot. Steam rooms filled with the low hum of conversations resuming as if the quake had been a mere interruption. In the House of the Veti, Merchants like the brothers Aulus and Gaius adorned their walls with fourth-style paintings, illusions of grandeur that belied the earth's unrest. But the tremors lingered, faint echoes in the years that followed, dismissed as the normal grumblings of Campania's volatile soil. No one heeded the warnings etched in the cracked pavements, for life pressed on with the clamor of daily routines, the laughter in taverns drowning out the subtle shifts below. By the time the signs became clear, it was already too late. The mountains' silence, a deceptive veil over the brewing cataclysm. As August of AD 79 dawned, Pompeii stood under a clear sky, the morning light filtering through vine-covered pergolas, where families broke their fast with simple meals of bread dipped in olive oil, cheese, and fruits plucked from nearby orchards. The air carried the faint brine of the sea, mixed with the earthy scent of tilled fields on Vesuvius's slopes, where farmers tended vines heavy with ripening grapes, their hands stained purple from the harvest. Slaves swept the mosaic floors of atria, water from central pools reflecting the painted ceilings above, while matrons directed household tasks with quiet authority, the clatter of pottery and looms providing a steady backdrop. Children darted through narrow alleys, their shouts echoing off graffiti-scrawled walls, proclaiming loves, curses, and election slogans in faded red paint. In the Thermopolia, counters groaned under jars of garum and wine, patrons lingering over quick bites amid the steam of simmering stews, conversations flowing like the Sarno River nearby. The forum buzzed with activity, magistrates in togas conferring under porticos, while vendors hawked jewelry and pottery, the jingle of bells on harnesses signaling the arrival of carts from Naples. Baths opened early, the slap of sandals on marble floors, and the murmur of bathers and tepidariums, creating a symphony of relaxation, vapors scented with oils rising to the domes. Yet beneath this veneer of normalcy, the earth whispered unease, minor tremors rattling doors and spilling water from fountains, dismissed as commonplace in a land accustomed to such whims. The mountain loomed green and serene, its summit a gentle cone without the scars of past fury, lulling the city into a false sense of security as pressures mounted unseen. 4 days before the end, the tremors intensified, gentle shakes that dislodged dust from rooftops and set animals, pacing restlessly in stables, their whinnies cutting through the evening hush. Wells fluctuated strangely, water levels dropping then surging, a curiosity noted by some but explained away as seasonal quirks. The mineral-rich groundwater from volcanic depths ignored in its portent. Birds took flight in unusual patterns, wheeling over the bay as if fleeing an invisible threat, their cries a dissonant chorus against the laughter from evening banquets. In the house of the surgeon, an old Samnite structure with its austere facade, a family might have paused at a rattled lamp, oil spilling onto the floor in a slick pool, but routine prevailed. Diners of eggs, fish, and vegetables shared in triclinia. Stories exchanged under the glow of terracotta lamps. Markets closed with the setting sun, vendors securing stalls against the night, the streets emptying to the soft footfalls of night watchmen and the distant bark of dogs. Temples flickered with votive candles, priests intoning prayers to Venus Pompeii, the city's patron, unaware that their pleas would go unanswered. The air grew heavier, a subtle charge like before a storm, but the stars shone bright overhead, deceiving the watchful few who gazed at Vesuvius's outline. No evacuations were ordered, no alarms raised. 4 earthquakes were as familiar as the sea's tide, a part of life's tapestry, but no one understood what was coming next, the quiet prelude to a symphony of destruction that would silence the city forever. As the fateful day approached, instability crept into the fabric of daily existence, wells drying up in some quarters, while others overflowed with foul-smelling water. The ground's unrest manifesting in ways that puzzled the learned and the lowly alike. Fissures appeared in garden soils, steam venting faintly from cracks that gardeners hastily covered with earth, attributing it to the hot summer. Livestock grew agitated, refusing feed and lowing through the nights, their unease mirrored in the restless sleep of their owners, dreams haunted by vague omens. In the palestra, athletes trained under the sun, the thud of feet on sand and the clash of wooden swords drowning out the occasional rumble, sweat mingling with the dust kicked up by drills. The triangular forum's Doric temple stood sentinel, its columns unmarked. Priests sacrificing doves whose blood stained altars, seeking favor from gods who seemed indifferent. Political graffiti proliferated on walls, Calls for votes in upcoming elections scrawled in charcoal, a sign of civic life pressing forward amid the subtle chaos. Families in humbler homes, with cramped rooms and shared courtyards, gathered around hearths, the crackle of fires and scent of herbs, masking the earth's sulphurous hints wafting from afar. Yet decisions were made in ignorance. Merchants stocked warehouses. Farmers planned harvests. Elites hosted symposia with flowing wine and philosophical debates, all betting on continuity. The mountains' fertile flanks promised abundance, blinding them to the peril brewing within, a pressure cooker of magma ready to burst. On the morning of August 24th, the city awoke to an ordinary dawn, the cock's crow piercing the quiet as bakers fired ovens, the aroma of rising dough wafting through streets still cool from the night. Fishermen set out on the bay, nets cast into waters teeming with life, sails billowing in the gentle breeze that carried no hint of ash yet. In lavish villas like the House of the Silver Wedding, servants polished silver and arranged flowers, preparing for guests, the hicalamed atria echoing with preparations. The forum stirred with early risers, scribes setting up stalls for legal documents, the clink of tools from artisans' workshops adding to the symphony of awakening. Baths filled with the first patrons, the gurgle of fountains and low voices in changing rooms, a soothing ritual. Children attended lessons in shaded porticos, reciting verses from Virgil, their young minds untroubled by the faint vibrations underfoot. But pressures had reached a tipping point. Decisions long ago made to rebuild after the Great Quake, to ignore the minor ones sealing fates in complacency. Key figures like magistrates debated trivial matters, unaware that the system's fragility was about to crack. The air hummed with potential, a tension like strung wire. As the mountain held its breath, around midday the system began to fail. A distant boom echoing from Vesuvius as the volcano awoke after centuries of slumber. A massive column of ash and rock surging skyward like a dark umbrella pine, blotting the sun and casting an eerie twilight over the bay. Pumice rained down lightly at first, pattering on rooftops like hail. Citizens pausing in streets to gaze upward, confusion rippling through the crowds as the ground trembled more violently. Birds fled in panicked flocks, their wings a frantic blur against the darkening sky, while the sea receded slightly, waves lapping uncertainly at the shore. In the forum, debates halted, faces turning pale under the falling debris, the acrid scent of sulfur now unmistakable, stinging eyes and throats. Merchants shuttered stalls hastily, goods abandoned in the rush, the clatter of feet on stone amplifying the growing panic. Families gathered belongings, slaves laden with bundles, heading for gates or the harbor, but many hesitated, seeking shelter in sturdy homes, doors barred against the unknown. The air thickened with dust, muffling sounds to a eerie hush broken by cries of alarm, the first roofs creaking under the weight of accumulating lapilli. As ash fell heavier, human consequences unfolded in waves of terror, roofs collapsing under the pumice's burden, crushing those below in sudden darkness, screams cut short amid the rubble, streets choked with debris, visibility dropping 2 arms' length, people stumbling blindly, coughing in the toxic haze that seared lungs and blinded eyes. Families separated in the chaos, calls lost in the roar of falling stones, the once vibrant city transforming into a labyrinth of fear. Pyroclastic surges loomed, superheated gases racing down slopes. But before their arrival, social bonds frayed looting in abandoned shops, pushes at gates, the strong trampling the weak in desperate flight. In Herculaneum nearby, similar horrors played out. But in Pompeii, the breakdown was visceral, the air heavy with the metallic temps of panic and the silence of the trapped. Boats fell, asphyxiated or buried alive, poses frozen in final agony, a society unraveling thread by thread under nature's inexorable force. The long-term impact echoed through history. Pompeii and its sister cities entombed under layers of ash and pumice, preserved in a time capsule that would slumber for centuries until rediscovery in the 1700s sparked a renaissance in archaeology. The ruins revealed an intimate portrait of Roman life, from frescoes capturing daily joys to loaves carbonized in ovens, influencing art, science, and understanding of antiquity. Vesuvius's eruption reshaped the Bay of Naples, pushing coastlines inland, erasing prosperous lands, and scattering survivors to rebuild elsewhere, their tales woven into legend by witnesses like Pliny the Younger. Empires rose and fell, but Pompeii's snapshot endured. A warning etched in stone about human hubris against nature's might. Its streets now walked by millions seeking echoes of the past, yet the haunting legacy lingers in the plaster casts of the fallen, their forms contorted in eternal struggle, voids filled with the absence of lives cut short. The mountain stands watchful still, its slopes green once more, but the silence of buried streets whispers of fragility, how prosperity can vanish in a breath of fire and ash. In the end, Pompeii teaches that civilizations, no matter how grand, teeter on the edge of rupture. The quiet before the storm, a deceptive calm that masks the inevitable.